Jeff Christensen working with Trey Lance. What does it mean? We'll hit that next on our 49er video. But check out Pig and a Pickle, 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera, open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. All right, let's talk a little bit about Trey Lance and his quarterback coach, Jeff Christensen. Reports have been out that Trey, once again, is working with Jeff Christensen, his independent throwing coach, on his mechanics and trying to get himself ready to compete for a quarterback job on the 49er roster this summer. Now, who is Jeff Christensen, you may be asking? Christensen played at Eastern Illinois. He was a quarterback there. He played in the NFL with Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Philadelphia in the 1980s. He's in his early 60s, and he's been working with Patrick Mahomes. And this year he started working with Trey Lance. And, the one thing that Christensen has maintained is that we're going to see a different Trey Lance in Santa Clara this summer. And he's been talking about that, boasting that that's indeed the case. And I've got every reason to believe that that is accurate. The one thing about Trey Lance, and I've maintained this really since he was coming out of North Dakota State in the draft a few years back, that he's passionate about improving, about being a great quarterback. It means a lot to him. There's your physical gifts, your mental gifts, and then you also have how important is football to you. And that's like one of the things that we really don't know about any of these players when they're in the draft. We can kind of, there's different things that you can look at and try to measure their processing capability and their mental capacity. There's other traits or other things that you can look at to try to measure their physical capacity or potential. But the one thing that is just impossible to ever know is how important is football to any particular individual prospect. And this was what I maintained was one of the reasons I love Trey Lance coming out of North Dakota State. Football is the family business. His father, Carlton, played defensive back, I believe, with Saskatchewan in the early and mid-'90s. And I can remember scouting him when I was the personnel assistant and quality control coach for the Sacramento Gold Miners under Kay Stevenson in the early 90s. And he was playing for Saskatchewan at the time. So football is the family business. That's what Carlton did. That's what Trey is doing. So football is important to Trey. And that part is like, you never know. You never know. Sometimes people are really good at something, but they may not be that into it. Or they're just naturally blessed with great gifts, but they're not all that fired up about the career. Trey is passionate about being an NFL football player. So he's going to put everything he's got into it. He's passionate about improving as a player. He wants to be great. And that to me is a huge part of the equation. And one of the main reasons that I loved him as a prospect coming out is because not only does he have the mental, not only does he have the physical, but it means a lot to him. This is what the guy wants to do. He wants to be a pro football player, and not just any pro football player. He wants to be a great pro football player. And so to seek out Jeff Christensen, to seek out Patrick Mahomes, to spend the time working with that duo, to try to work on all the nuances of playing the position, I think it's super smart on the part of Trey. And I think ultimately it's going to pay off. But that to me is you can check off all the boxes. Is the guy smart enough? Yes. Is the guy physical enough? Yes. Does he have enough gifts physically to play the position at the pro level? Yes. And then the other box is, how important is football to him? And it's very important. So is football the central focus of his professional life? Yes. Check that box. Now, so here we have Trey Lance going into year 3. Year 1 was a true redshirt year, right? He redshirted that first year, just sat behind Jimmy Garoppolo. Year 2 was lost early on because of injury, and he was handed that number 1 job in year 2. And unfortunately, he went down in the Seattle game super early in the season, and he was done for the year. To me, Trey Lance looks a lot more confident and a lot more comfortable this season based on what I've seen in the OTAs and the minicamp. Now, granted, we're only there for about 20% of it. So we're seeing about 20%, and there's 80% we're not seeing. But what my eyes have told me is that the same things that I saw last year from Brock Purdy, I'm seeing this year from Trey Lance. In all of the drills, he looks more comfortable. He looks more confident. He's mastering them. He's mastering them with somewhat ease. He looks totally comfortable in every drill that they're running. You know, he's not trying to throw the football super hard on every throw. He's throwing it with more timing and more tempo. The one thing you got to remember about Trey Lance is he was an incredibly young, incredibly raw rookie. In fact, you could argue that Trey Lance is the most inexperienced quarterback to enter the NFL maybe ever. It had been 40 years since somebody had thrown as few passes as he had thrown at North Dakota State and went in the first round of the draft. So there's degrees of everything, right? There's degrees of athleticism, degrees of strength, degrees of speed, degrees of intellect. And there's, it's all on a scale. But when it comes to inexperience, Trey Lance was on the bottom of the scale. He was the most raw. He was the youngest quarterback. He was the most inexperienced. He had made the fewest reps as a collegiate quarterback compared to the other quarterbacks that we've seen. And so it makes sense that it would take more than just a year or two. Then you mix in the fact that the Niners are a Super Bowl contender every year, that they redshirted in the first year, that he lost his entire second year to injury. And that's why we're sitting here in year 3, and Trey is desperately trying to establish himself still as an NFL quarterback. Now, what do I think he needs to improve on? To me, based on what I've seen, he needs to improve on his accuracy and his timing. The ball does not always come out on time, and it is not always accurate. But as far as processing, I think he's processing what he's seeing well. Now it's really about the mechanics of throwing with improved accuracy. The timing, I think, comes just through repetitions on the field with your receivers, repetitions in the offense, mental reps in the playbook, knowing the intricacies and the nuances of Kyle's offense. These things all take time. So that's what I've seen improved in the mini camps and in the offseason with Trey Lance. His accuracy is better. His timing is better. And I believe Trey probably improved quite a bit this last year just by watching Brock Purdy expertly as a rookie kind of operate the offense without really knowing all the nuances of every single play. Brock was kind of learning as he went, but he was accurate and the ball came out on time and he was processing what he sees. And those are the 3 keys to playing quarterback. You got to process what you see at the line of scrimmage. Your timing, the ball's got to come out on time. It's not like you can come out, if you're new at a job, you just show up early. Hey, I'll just show up early. I'll get there early. It's not like that in the NFL. You can't be like, well, you know what? I'll just throw it early. No. You have to throw it with the proper timing, the proper accuracy, and you got to process what you see. And what I see from Trey is that it's almost impossible for me to tell in off-season minicamp if he's processing well. But I think that there's no doubt that he's probably improving in his processing of what he sees, just based on the mental reps. But it's the mechanics of throwing with accuracy and the mechanics and the repetitions of getting in sync in your offense with your timing, with your receivers, knowing each receiver. Danny Gray runs a different route than Brandon Ayuk, who runs a different route than Jawan Jennings, that has a different nuance to his route than Deebo Samuel. They're all different, and it takes time to learn those things. So I believe Trey's going to have a much improved season. The question is, and I expect him to play really well. The question is this summer is, will the 49ers see that Trey plays better and exercise that 5th-year option? Or will the 49ers, staring at a very challenging 2024 cap situation, see that Trey is playing well, have other teams knocking at their door asking for him in a trade, and then pull the trigger on trading him to ease their 2024 cap burden? I think that's really the only question. But overall, I think it's been a huge positive for Trey to have worked with Jeff Christensen. Christensen clearly has had a positive impact on Trey. I'm sure Mahomes has as well. Christensen is really capable. Not to say that Beck and some of the other quarterback coaches that have looked at Trey have not been good, but I think it's safe to say that Jeff Christensen, working with Christensen, has benefited Trey Lance, and I think we're going to see it. And when Christensen boasts that we're going to see a different Trey Lance this summer in Santa Clara, I believe him. I really do. Because Trey, at his core, is smart enough, athletic enough, and football means enough to him that he's passionate about improving. He's passionate about being great. You don't seek out Jeff Christensen. You don't seek out Patrick Mahomes unless you're just really, really want to be great. And now going into year 3, he looks more confident. He looks more comfortable. He looked more confident and more comfortable in the minicamp, in the OTAs. And you just got to acknowledge that this wasn't just a pretty raw player. This might have been the most raw quarterback that we've ever seen coming into the league. And yeah, some guys hit the ground and they're ready to roll. But more times than not, they need to have those reps to improve and kind of go through the process of transitioning from college quarterback to pro quarterback. So I think you're going to see this summer improvement from Trey Lance in his accuracy. I think you're going to see improvement from Trey Lance in his processing. I think you're going to see improvement from Trey Lance in his timing. I think he will be improved dramatically just from watching Brock Purdy give him a template of exactly how to operate this offense. And the only question is, I expect Trey to play a whole lot better this summer. The question is, how do the Niners react to that? Do they react to it by exercising that 5th-year option and saying, you know what, Trey, you're number 2, and trading Sam Darnold? Or do they react to that by him playing well in the preseason, by getting trade offers for him and pulling the trigger, sending him somewhere else? That I hope doesn't happen, but I think if he plays well, both those options are on the table. All right, hope you enjoyed our video on Trey Lance. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.